Hello, it's Thursday again, isn't it?
Comes around very quick.
Alex and Naomi on the infant feeding. It does come around quick, doesn't it? And I have 2 weeks off. And we are talking about infant feeding issues. So anything to do with feeding, this is about an hour session. And we've done many now, haven't we, since April 20. So really, this is sort of part of our DNA now, this session that we're doing. So we're really happy to have questions and answers today on anything that you have to do with feeding your baby. So you might be giving bottles of formula, you might be giving bottles of breast milk, breastfeeding, or weaning, and anything in between. So we are really happy to answer anything that you might want to know about, and we love your questions. Every week we get fantastic questions, and it always ends up being on a theme. I think one person writes something and everybody thinks, oh, that's a good idea, I'll ask about my problem. So hopefully you will be really creative and find some brilliant questions for us again that we can answer, that everybody will find useful. Hope you're finding it really useful. We are not as busy as we have been, but everything is going quite well in the hospital. We've always got lots to do, and we've got lots of mums and babies coming in and out all the time, lots of births. And still seeing some COVID at times, so it's still around, and we're still encouraging everybody to consider having their COVID vaccine. We know that that goes through to your baby and protects your baby inside you, but also protects you from COVID. And also, if you've had your baby, the antibodies are in your breast milk, so it's really beneficial to everybody if you do have it, and it will protect you. We know that nearly every mum that's come into hospital with and being really poorly with COVID has not had a vaccination, so it really does protect your health and your baby's health. So we will always be saying this as long as it's around, that you know, it's really important that you consider having it. So on a better note, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I've got feedback I've got to do, because last week I couldn't remember how much we should be taking as vitamin D as as mums. How much we should be recommending that you take vitamin D on a daily basis if you are breastfeeding your baby. Well, actually, we all should be taking vitamin D. As I mentioned before, we as a nation are vitamin D deficient, and it's really important that us that live in the northern hemisphere, we don't have so much exposure to sun, are supplementing ourselves with vitamin D. Anyway, I've looked it up, and it says that if the RCOG, which is the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, so they're a very good resource, recommend 10 micrograms of vitamin D when pregnant and breastfeeding. And they say exactly what I've just said. We as a nation tend to be vitamin D deficient. It's not that our milk is deficient, it's that we are deficient. And if we're deficient, we haven't got enough to give to our babies either. So ideally, all people, men, women, whatever, should be taking vitamin D supplements, and babies should be supplemented as well. But the question was, how much should it be for a mother? And it was 10 micrograms daily is the answer from the RCOG. There you go. So sorry about that, but I couldn't remember. And that's so different. I say last week I was saying, because I was on my own, it's very difficult to look it up. But when there's the two of us, while you're talking, I could be looking something up. So there you go. So apologies, you've had to wait a whole week for that answer, but that's the answer.
Hopefully you found it yourself.
Yes, and to be honest, if you go and go anywhere that's selling vitamins that you can buy, it will be the recommended daily amount.
Yeah, the pregnancy multivitamins and things will have that volume of that dosage in it. So. Yeah. And I think certainly in the winter you need to take it. It sort of stores, and if you take medication, it stores for about 3 months. So in the summer, if you're out and about, but I think generally everybody's not going out so much. People on computers and PlayStation games. Kids aren't playing outside all day like they used to. So our lifestyle has changed. So it's even more. I think that's why it's been highlighted more.
And I think even as a new mum, you don't sit outside in the sunshine in the same way as you might do if you didn't have a small baby, because you're not going to have your baby out in full sunlight, because that isn't good for baby's skin. So it's quite common that even if you have been one of those people who loves to lie out in the sunshine, that actually once you've had a baby, you're less likely to do it as frequently.
Yeah, definitely. So what we're going to talk about, one of the things that I think that a lot of people talk about is what happens when they have their baby and it's not going so well, or you're very tired in the early days. And I think that you're very liable to make decisions at the wrong times when things aren't going so well. So you're extremely tired, you're very sore, your baby you know, you can't sit down, you can't sleep, your nipples are sore, maybe your milk's coming in, and that's quite uncomfortable in itself. And you know, you're struggling to get your baby to attach at the breast maybe, and what you do is at 4 o'clock in the morning you decide that you've had enough and you want to bottle feed, and so you send your partner out to the supermarket at 4 o'clock in the morning to buy some formula, or to the local garage to get some formula, because you just feel that that's the right thing. And so we always talk to mums about this when they really have a bad night, and talk them through it and just say, don't make a decision at 4 o'clock in the morning. When things aren't going as well as you want them to, just keep going until it gets light and you've had a cup of tea and there's people around, and you can ring your family, you can have chats with friends, and they can, you know, you can talk to your midwife or talk to your health visitor or whatever, and they can just, you know, settle you and reassure you that you're doing a brilliant job, and that you don't need to go out and get more food or change what you're doing unless you really, really want to do that. Because quite often we get comments that I wish I hadn't done that, you know, it was, you know, I could have just tried a bit harder, I could have done it for a bit longer. So it's just something to say is, don't make that decision about anything to do with your baby at 4 o'clock in the morning, because you are so tired and you don't see straight. And we see it an awful lot, don't we, that it's a very tearful time.
We see it on, you know, sort of like second postnatal night.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot, about the fact that in mums and babies on the second night, it could be really quite challenging. You may have had a really, what appears to be an angelic baby that slept lots since they were born, and then comes the second night and we say they grow horns because they're suddenly awake, they're demanding milk, they want to be
chasing it.
Yeah, they want to be with you, they want to be right next to you, they do not want to be in the cot, and by now you're desperate, you're really tired because you probably had a couple of days in labour, and you probably haven't slept well in your first night. And this is where we would be saying, you know, on that, when you're approaching that second night, the best thing your partners can do is give your baby a cuddle and let you get some sleep, so that you can then cope with the night. Because as Naomi said, we don't make our best decisions in the middle of the night, and it's very demoralising when you've got a baby that is awake a lot in the middle of the night and you're on your own on the postnatal ward.
Unsupported by your family, because you can't stay, you know, they can't stay with you.
Worrying that you're waking other mums, but they're not worried because they've been there too, or they're in the same situation. But, you know, it all plays a part in it, and that's when mums will suddenly say, well, I think I want to give them something else. So we're here to say...
Well, you don't feel confident that what you've got is enough. I think that's the problem, that you don't understand that babies don't need very much. You know, it's really important in the early days that your baby feeds frequently, but they don't rely on the food in the first 48 hours. So, you know, their volumes go up a little bit in your breasts at that time, but actually they do something called counter-regulation, which means that they burn fat when they're not getting calories. So their brain is fed whatever. They get their food to the brain, whether it's with ketogenesis, which is burning fat, or whether they get small dollops of very, very high calorie colostrum, which is what they're expecting to get as well. So the thing is that the more they feed, the more they're going to bring the milk in. And if you interrupt that by giving extra food, then it will delay your milk production or reduce it. Because what's happening is your baby's putting the order in for the food that they're going to need. And if they haven't put it in because you've given them food and made them sleep, it means that they haven't asked you to make it when you need it. So, you know, long term, it means that you then start to reduce your milk production, and that then becomes a problem later on in the, you know, the following week or two, when your milk is slow to come in, and your baby, you know, you're not getting as much time to practice breastfeeding while you're on the ward. You know, when you have such a short time as a patient in hospital, as a mum in hospital, that you don't get much time to get help. Because your baby is, you know, if you give large volumes of formula, in large volumes we're talking about 10 mils on day one. That's a huge amount for a newborn baby. You know, if you're giving anything extra, that really will fill them up. And I'll go on then. I'll get my tummy sizes out.
But I also
for you.
want to say, if you've got a healthy term infant, 10 mils is a huge amount. So, you know, we're not looking for mums out there. Anyone who's thinking, oh my goodness, I can't produce that sort of volume on day one. Most people cannot produce that volume on day one.
You know, baby's tummy is this big. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. And, you know, size for cherry. So it's tiny, tiny little tummy. And so they're not expecting to get large volumes in their tummy at that time. So if you do that, you'll fill it up and overflow it, and then your baby will go to sleep, and it's like having Christmas dinner, and they will fall asleep, and then they won't wake up for ages and ages and ages, and then they're not practicing feeding, you're not getting the opportunity to help, and also you're not stimulating your breast to produce the feeds, which is what we are supposed to do. You know, they chase the milk, and so by the second day they are chasing the milk. They're saying, I'm getting ready for this now. They start to poo more meconium out, because they've got colostrum, and they're clearing their tummy. They're starting to wake up from the medication that they've had in labour, or the long labour. They're tired, so they're starting to be aware of what's going on around them, and they're starting to say, feed me, feed me, feed me, I need milk. And if you do give them a large feed, they'll go to sleep, and then they won't do what they're supposed to do, which is stimulate you frequently in that time. So it's a really, really busy 2 or 3 days when you're waiting for the milk to come. And then by the end of the 3rd day, up to 4th day, your milk will have started to come in. You'll start to feel your breasts a bit heavier, more veiny and fuller and warm, and you know, you will suddenly see your baby starts to glug a little bit, or you feel that there's milk dripping, or you know, that your baby's much happier when it goes to the breast. So the volumes start to go up, and you will feel fuller. So that won't happen if you don't get your breasts stimulated in the same way. Your milk will come in because you've delivered a placenta, but it won't necessarily come in with the right amount for your baby's needs, because your baby hasn't asked for them if you've interrupted that feeding. And the other thing to say about that is, if you do give that sort of volume, you've got to keep giving it, because your baby's expecting it. And when you go home on day 1, at the end of day 1, your breast won't have that in it, so then your baby will still expect to get it. So then you end up in the needing to top up, giving extra food scenario, which you know, if you're going home, will mean that you've got to give formula. And you know, we're doing everything we can on the wards to protect you with you know, hand expressing, skin to skin, giving your baby lots of colostrum and frequent feeds, with you know, the option of some donor breast milk if you really need to give more food to your baby medically, and protect your baby from you know, having exposure to formula if that's not what you want. And you're having to go home and do it because you've created a problem which is you know, made a problem. You created something that's then made a problem, and you've had to then go home giving your baby more food. And the more you do that, the less your baby stimulates you, and the smaller your milk supply usually. So you end up with low supply, and your baby needing top-ups all the time, and you're pumping. And so, you know, just that first day can create all of those sort of knock-on effects, like dominoes, if that happens. So I think it is really frustrating for mums, isn't it, when it happens? Have you got anything to add to that?
No, I think it's just, you know, as you said, not making decisions in the middle of the night, and believing that your body has managed to sustain a baby for 9 months normally, and that the body is geared up to produce the milk. And it's quite common.
Go up every day in your breasts.
Yeah, it's quite common that babies will show all the signs of being hungry and not being totally what we'd call satisfied, and that is normal, because they're pushing and pushing and pushing your milk supply, and that's going to be rectified as soon as your milk comes in. And the more feeding you do, the more milk removal you have, the quicker your milk supply comes in, and that baby's needs are met. But it's all part of the process. Don't believe that your body's letting them down. It's not. It's part of the process.
And I think the other thing is that, you know, early skin to skin, and we've been in clinic this morning, and I was talking to several of the mums about this, and I said, which breast did you feed from in labour, at the end of labour when you had your baby? And they said, you know, whichever breast it was. And I said, is that the fuller breast? And they said, yes, I've got more milk in that side. So that first feed in the first hour is the one that really, really drives your milk supply. And you'll find that if you think back to, if you're breastfeeding, think back to which breast has got more milk in the early days, that you noticed it was more likely going to be the one that you fed at first after you had your baby. So one of the things we say is, apart from lots and lots of uninterrupted skin to skin, because that really surges your milk production massively, and it does stop you, you know, hopefully coming back in with weight loss, with your baby's weight loss. But you know, it really surges your milk production. But also, if you feed on one side, do some hand expressing on the other, because then you get really big amounts of milk that you've done at early stimulation in the first hour, and it's the first hour that makes the difference. And that doesn't, you can't get that time back. Once it's gone, you can't make that time up. You have to do it in that first hour where there's huge amounts of hormones surging through your body, and you know, the skin to skin and everything else really stimulates your milk production, and that continues. So, you know, if you keep, and sometimes you can't do it genuinely, you've got a baby that's sick, or you've been poorly, you know, you've had to have your baby separated from you, but as soon as you can, do it. And if you can't get your baby to feed, then do some hand expressing on both breasts, because then you've started the process going, and then you know, you've got time to catch up. Then you don't fall back, which is what happens if you don't do that early stimulation at the breast. So just think about it. Try and remember what we said if you haven't had your baby yet, because you can't imagine what it's like when you've got a hungry baby and your milk's late coming in, when you haven't got a baby in your arms. But actually, the mums that have will be shrieking at us saying, do it, because it will make all the difference, and it will just make it easier for you at 4 a.m. on the second night if you've had that really big surge of stimulation and skin to skin at the first hour for your delivery. And that includes every type of delivery, even if you've had a cesarean. More importantly, so if you've had a cesarean, you need to do that early skin to skin and hand expression or feed to get that flow going.
Should we do some of the questions that we've got?
Yeah.
So Emma has said, good afternoon. My baby girl is now 1 month old, and after a tricky start, we've made some really positive steps forward with breastfeeding.
Well done.
I'm finding that feeding from the left breast can be quite painful, no problem with the right, and I wondered if you had any tricks I could try to encourage a more successful and pain-free latch. Thank you so much. With a lovely smiley face.
So, sometimes what happens, and you're not saying how you're feeding your baby, but what you might find is when you're feeding on that side and you're right-handed, you've got really good dexterity and you've got better control of your baby because you're better with your right hand. And when you go to your left side, you're not so dexterous, and so you're doing something slightly different. And one of the tricks you can do is trick your baby and you into thinking that you're still on the side that you're very dexterous with. So
you have
feed
2
like
left
that.
breasts or 2 right breasts.
2 left or 2 right, exactly that. So when you finish feeding on that side, you just slide your baby round and imagine that you're on the same side. So your hands and your baby are in exactly the same way, being held in the same way as if they're on this side.
You there to here.
But what you do need to do is make sure they're in the contours of your body in the same way. So this little one is tucked right round my rib cage, feet tucked right round. Now if you go onto your underarm, they're still tucked right round, and their feet are down by my back, you know, where the bra straps are. And so you've tucked your baby into the contours of your rib cage, just the same. It's no different there to there. So you don't want your baby out here somewhere. You want it tucked into the contours of your body, so it's exactly the same. So if you're feeding under your arm, it's exactly the same. Your baby's tucked into the contours of your body. So you go that way, and then you imagine that your baby is just sliding across and going onto the breast in exactly the same way. So you're doing exactly the same thing in your head, and that might help you a little bit. And Alex has got lovely pictures.
So I was going to remind you, what we always show you, that we want babies. I'll do them in order. So we want a baby. I hope this isn't going to be too much reflection. So we want to start nose opposite nipple. So this could be, the baby could be that way, it could be this way. You can imagine this baby, we can't tell where that breast is. So this baby could be coming in here, it could be coming that way, it could be upright, so it could be any way really. So, but it's nose opposite nipple regardless. We then go, nice big wide mouth. And that hand, the mother's hand on this picture is a little bit high if anything. I think the other pictures are slightly better. Yes, these ones are better.
The hairdressers, isn't it?
Yeah, the hairdresser's sink. So here you can see.
This is what we see a lot of, but we want that.
Yeah, so you can see the hand is much lower on this one, and that palm of the hand, this part of the hand, wants to be on the shoulders. So this bit is the sling for the baby's head. And the baby's going to tip into that, and that's where the pressure is. The pressure is coming from this bit here, not up here. So you want that angle. So you really want to have the wrist into the back. So you can see that baby there, and that mother is then going to push this baby straight. That head is not doing this, the head is going to come on like that. The chin is going to hit first, and the upper lip is going to skim the nipple, as you can see on this picture. And that allows the baby to get the nipple right over the top of their tongue, which is filling most of their mouth, and to the back of the mouth where there's a lovely soft palate. It's like a cushion for the baby. And this is what a baby should look like when they're on. Chin in, nose free. You should be able to see a bit of areola above and a lot less below. you should be able to see lovely full and round cheeks. No, none of this going on. Full and round cheeks, and nice rhythmic sucking, and pain-free. That's how it should be. So it's have a look at what you're doing, Emma, and just see if any of that can help. If you need more support, then think about maybe seeing one of the supporters out there. You said your baby's a month. Yeah, so health visitors, Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, Abingdon Breastfeeding Cafe, there's La Leche League. There's lots and lots of support out there for you, and all of those people can have a peek at what you're doing and offer you support with positioning and attachment. And it's quite likely, as Naomi said, that actually our breasts are slightly different and we need to hold our baby slightly differently on each side. So thinking about the angle of the dangle.
We both think of the same thing.
So it's thinking about where does your rest point your baby wants to come on. Do you want the
Exactly,
baby?
yeah,
There you go, you do the angle.
So if you imagine that if your breasts, I don't know if I sit like that.
No, kneel down, yeah. That's it.
So if your breasts are sticking out like that, your baby would be tummy to mummy. You see, it would be crossed like that, but most women's breasts are there. That's normal. So you've got to then bring your baby round so that they're looking up. So you can see that they're looking up, upwards. Now if your breast is right down there, they really have to get right underneath and sit on your lap almost. And not to be on their side at all. So if you imagine there. So if you're going there with your baby there, it's going to fall out of its mouth and come off, and you're going to be sore. So you've got to then bring your baby up and stabilise it so that when your baby's on the breast, it's stable in your baby's mouth and not falling out when they stop sucking, which is what happens. So make sure you get the angle of the dangle right there. Look at your breasts in the mirror, so that you can see what your breasts do, not what somebody else's do on YouTube. So you can see exactly where you need to do, or get your partner to film you and see what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
So that you can see what's happening and where your breasts dangle, and then you can move your baby according to that to get the stabilisation. And you might find that one breast is more dangly than the other, or more upright than the other. That's quite normal. So it might be that you've got to do something slightly different on the other breast, which might also be the problem. Have a go.
But mirror there. Sit next to a mirror.
Yeah.
Have a look. Although I have to say, that might give you an idea, and I couldn't cope with it after that because I never get it right. I'm trying to do something in the mirror. But anyway, have a go, Emma, and I hope that really helps. But I would say you're more than 50% there. I know you're saying the right is fine, but actually the fact that you can do the right, the left is going to follow very swiftly afterwards. That's more than 50% there. It's absolutely brilliant.
It's just practice.
Well done you. Stages all the way through, lol. With baby Alicia. Oh, that forgot. Each day she'll be 19 months old on the 6th. Shush. 19 months old on the 6th of December. Talking about vitamin D. Me and Alicia and Andrew and our partner, we're hopefully going to go to a hot country next year. We'll get a bit of natural vitamin D. Oh, how lovely. Right, that's probably going to go off again. Apologies. That's our bleep. I'm going to stick it down the side of the sofa for the minute. I'll answer that in a minute. So that sounds really lovely. Enjoy, Charlotte. Heba has said, hello, thank you so much for your brilliant live sessions. I really enjoyed watching them through antelatally. My baby is 2 weeks old and has about 5 to 6 dirty nappies in 24 hours. I'm not sure if this is too much or within the acceptable range. Also, not all the poos are the same. Some are very light and some are heavier, so not sure whether to count them equally. They're soft and yellow and he has a normal amount of wet nappies. You are doing a brilliant job.
Plenty going in there then, isn't it? It's coming out.
We talk about minimums, we don't talk about maximums, so no concerns about that. You're looking for our poo chart. Can you use those?
Poos, live nappies.
So we have no maximums, but we do have minimums. So you are doing absolutely brilliantly. That's such a good indicator of what's happening. 5 to 6 dirty nappies in 24 hours, and then all those wet ones. That's brilliant.
That's a normal size sort of nappy. That's quite big poo.
But the minimum we talk about
coin.
is £2 coin, two £2 coin size poos are not big. So, if your baby is doing that many poos and that many wees, you're doing a fantastic job. And we don't worry about how many, we don't worry about that, as long as they're nice and yellow and good in that respect, which sounds like they are. So, well done you.
And up to 5 to 6 weeks, they poo every day. They should poo every day at least twice.
Yeah.
But after that, they stop pooing every day sometimes. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they keep pooing the same amount, but they can reduce the amount of poo that they do after about 5 to 6 weeks. So don't be alarmed if your baby's about that and they're not doing 2 poos a day and you're listening to what we're saying, because if they're over that age, then we don't always expect them to poo in the same way. They tend to absorb more efficiently and not have so much waste.
I think it's also to do with the profile of the breast milk, isn't it? Because the protein in breast milk is changing all the way through. So the profile of the protein when a baby's first born is different to the profile of the baby when they're 6 months, when they're a year, when they're 2 years. It's changing all the way through, and that can make a difference to how your baby poos. So it's as we talked about last week about how the breast milk's constantly changing to meet the baby's needs, and that's what's going on. So that has an impact on the baby's pooing, because the protein's changing slightly.
And they also become more efficient, so feeds are often much quicker when they get a bit older as well, certainly into months rather than weeks. They start to feed much shorter time, not always, but they tend to be more efficient as well. So everything changes as they get a bit older, and that you all get used to each other.
And you don't have to be
lovely and normal.
You don't have to be so hung up about positioning attachment either, because they get to the point where they just do it themselves. Heve's questions carried on. She's also wondering what counts as a feed. Sometimes I feed him on both breasts and he seems satisfied, but then I put him down to sleep, and 5 to 10 minutes later he decides he does want more and starts showing feeding cues and crying. So I put him back on for another round before he seems fully satisfied. I'm not sure whether this counts as one big overall feed or 2 separate feeds.
I don't think it really matters. As long as your baby's reaching all its milestones and gaining weight and you're not sore and you've got plenty of milk, it's much more than food.
Yeah.
So it might be that he just wants more comfort. He might want to be closer to you for a bit longer. He might be feeling a bit lonely, a bit bored, and that's how they manage it. That's all they can do at this age, and it's more than just getting food. It's about the oral satisfaction and the needs that they need to meet to soothe them. And so the uninterrupted feeding, the responsive feeding that we're talking about, where if you're full you wake your baby, if your baby's hungry it wakes you, is all part of their development, and so that grows their brains and it makes them happy babies, and if you've got that, then they grow into happy children and happy adults. So it's all about responsive reciprocity, and so their needs are just more than food. So if they want to feed, then feed them. If it's constant and your baby's not gaining weight and they're unhappy and you're sore, then that's not right. But if everything else is okay, and you're managing it all, and he settles and has a good sleep afterwards, then that's absolutely perfect. But it is more than food.
Yeah, we talk about having a minimum of 8 feeds in 24 hours, and that some gaps between feeds will be really short and some gaps will be bigger. So as long as you, over a 24-hour period, you're getting more than 8 feeds, and that you can, you get some periods of time maybe longer and some periods shorter. What we don't want is a baby that is constantly at the breast, which is fitting with what Naomi's saying, because they may not be getting enough food. But what you're describing is a baby that's getting enough food. So it sounds fabulous, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it is just so important that they have that opportunity to get that that feed and access to you. It makes good amounts of milk, and it makes babies happy, and that's really important.
Yeah, it meets their needs for closeness and comfort. As Naomi said, it's building the baby's brain. So don't ever underestimate how important it is to keep your babies close and to meet their needs. Because as Naomi's just said, you're building happy babies that become happy toddlers, that become happy children and happy adults.
And you just have to think about how much food you eat in a day, and think about when you put food to your mouth. You might have a cup of tea, and then you might want a biscuit, and then you might have a 3-course meal, and then you might have a snack, a banana, have a yogurt, have a piece of cake, then you have a sandwich.
Or like us, the sneaky chocolate we had before we came on.
And think about all the number of times that you actually put something into your mouth every day, and it comes to 16, 20. There's lots of emotional eating, there's lots of things that pleasureful eating, and babies are no different. So you can't imagine your baby having one feed, going to sleep for 3 hours, and you've had 4 snacks between that feed, and then you expect your baby to not wake you up and feed. It's just not fair, is it, when you've been able to have unlimited access to food and drink? So think about it in a different way, turn it round on its head, and look at what your baby's needs are, and just think about why you're eating all of those times, and put it into your baby's perspective. That's what your baby needs, but you're giving breast milk instead, which is much better for them than probably what we all snack on at times. But just think about how often you put something in your mouth every day, and count it up over a week, and just see how many feeds you have. and then put it into perspective with your baby's 8 feeds, and think, well, actually 8 to 13 is absolutely what your baby should be doing, and it is more than food.
Charlotte's put on here, she says food before 1 is just for fun, so that goes with the babies when they're weaning, but actually how important breastfeeding still is right up to the first year and beyond, and it's the main food source, and it is that it's, as we say, it's way more than just the food the baby's getting. Babies are feeding for so many reasons. As I said, it might be just checking in, they're feeling a bit lonely, they want to know you're there, they want to check that you're going to meet their needs. So there is so much going on when you're breastfeeding a baby. It's lovely. I think you're doing a fabulous job.
Well done you.
Yeah. Emma has come back saying that's really helpful, thank you. I'll try and give this a try this afternoon. The photos are really helpful. Brilliant. We love them.
Back.
Yeah, we think they're really useful, those ones. Charlotte has said, I formula fed my first baby, now pregnant with a second, and would like to breastfeed, but will struggle as I didn't with first. Will I struggle as I didn't with the first? No, not necessarily. I mean, the fact that you're accessing these sessions is going to help, because you're going to have a bit more understanding of what to expect. We've already told you that second night might be really challenging, but go into it ready. Maybe think about ensuring you know how to hand express before you even have your baby, and that gets covered on this a lot.
Yeah,
having
some of these syringes at 36 weeks from your midwife.
But just knowing the skill, not necessarily having to collect it, knowing the skill of how to hand express before you have your baby is really beneficial. Not necessarily collecting much milk, but knowing that if I struggle to get my baby to attach when the baby is born, I've got another way of getting the milk going, and we've got time for babies to learn. We haven't got time, as we've said, for your milk supply to be established. So really
get
ensuring...
your midwife to show you how to do it when you get to 37 weeks, when you have your appointment near your 37-week appointment, and just get her to watch you do it as part of the appointment. We can show you now, but you'll probably have forgotten by the time, not doing it on your own or with somebody, a midwife in front of you, is much easier when you're doing it in real time.
But you could go and have a look at our videos, which we actually, I noticed that Oxfordshire Maternity Voices Partnership put a link up to our videos the other day, which was great. So we've got a series of 7 videos that are on YouTube. You can find the link via our infant feeding page on the maternity OUH website. So you can find the link there. There is one all about hand expressing, and we filmed this fantastic mum and her gorgeous baby. You'll see her little baby sitting next to her in the bed, and she was hand expressing it. She shows you how to hand express. Her milk is just changing from colostrum to transitional milk, so it's beginning to drip. When it's colostrum, it doesn't drip, it collects in big droplets, and then you collect it with a syringe. And she shows beautifully how to do that. And we've also got a leaflet that's on our webpage as well, that talks through hand expressing during the antenatal period and learning how to do it, why you might want to do it, and how to do it. So a combination of that leaflet, the video, and talking to your midwife should help you with that. And the other thing is thinking about that uninterrupted skin to skin that Naomi's just mentioned. Uninterrupted skin to skin at birth brings out the baby's breast seeking and breastfeeding behaviour and gets you off to the best start. Picking the baby up at any point before that they have fed, so I talked about this last week, once the baby's born, they're on your chest, they should stay there. They shouldn't move until they've fed. They shouldn't be removed to be weighed or dressed or cuddled by someone else. They should stay with you. And that brings out their natural breastfeeding and breast seeking behaviour. And they go through 9 stages, the 9th being sleep. And if they're moved, they might go back down. It's a bit like a game of snakes and ladders. They go back down again and they have to start again. And if it gets to about an hour and a half and they haven't fed, the likelihood is they'll go to sleep. And that's it. We've missed that opportunity. And it makes a really big difference to have that feed in that first hour to an hour and a half after birth. So
and I think also the skin to skin continues. It's really important that you don't stop doing skin to skin, because that continues to stimulate the breast seeking behaviours, and that's really important for feeding, is that if you have them next to you, they're going to wake up and feed. If you have them in a cot
over there,
in a blanket next to a radiator, they're not going to wake up and feed, and you're not going to get the practice that you need in hospital. So keep them skin to skin as much as you can.
I mentioned this last week. This is the 9 stages. You can look it up. It's called the magical hour, or sometimes it's called the golden hour. Thinking there, my brain went blank. 9 stages. Have a look. This is done by the most amazing lady who's done a ton of research, Kaiser Brinda. She's fantastic, and it talks about what a difference it makes to have this uninterrupted skin-to-skin contact in the first hour after birth, i.e. the baby's not moved. Think snakes and ladders. So they go shoot down the ladder otherwise. So I hope that helps.
It really gets you off to a good start. Really helps you.
So Charlotte, good luck with that. You know, if you've got any other concerns, chat to your midwives. If your midwives think that you might benefit from additional support, they might suggest you talk to us if you've got any particular risk factors. And I covered risk factors last week, you know, the sort of mothers that we would be wanting to talk to in the antenatal period that may have real problems. And it does include if you really struggled the first time round. So have a chat with your midwives, but they may be able to reassure you. Heba has said, thanks so much. That's so informative and reassuring. Good. Well, you're doing a great job, Heba.
Totally.
We're just delighted.
Totally.
Right, that's it for the moment. We'll wait for the next flurry. They come in flurries, so we'll see if there's any more coming.
Well, I can go through hand expressing. So we have a little look at hand expressing while we're here, because I'm sure, you know, some of you might want a reminder and others may have not tried it before and you might be pregnant. So it is definitely worth talking through. And, you know, the benefits are that it does the job for you if your baby's not attaching or baby's a bit sleepy. And we know sometimes that babies that have had medication in labour, so you might have had an epidural or you might have had an injection, pain relief injection, and that will, or a cesarean, that will make your baby more sleepy. They've had more medication. So that does sit in your baby's system for a little bit after your baby's born, and it often makes them unable to play out their cues to feed, and they often have quite long sleeps. And if you've had quite a long labour or a water birth even, quite often your baby's got a tummy full of yuck. And when they're, you know, and going back to tummy sizes, this is your baby's newborn tummy. They don't need much in their tummy in order to feel full. And so if it's full of yuck, they will either be sick, and you find sometimes about 12 hours after you've had your baby they start to be a bit sickly, or they have to wait till they've passed lots of meconium and it starts to clear things. But you know, they don't play out the feeding cues if they're very sleepy, and they don't wake up in the same way, which is why this is your emergency care. This is the care that you can do to always make sure that you stimulate your breasts in order to stimulate milk production, and also more importantly to give something to your baby in the early days. Or if when your milk comes in and you're really full and your baby's suddenly got this really heavy full breast and it feels very odd. You know, they're used to a very soft breast in their mouth, and suddenly it's full and hard, and those who've been there know what it means. They just don't recognise what it is, and they just don't feed. So you might find hand expressing is your emergency care for when you're full, and you can soften the nipple area as well, and that's very helpful. So so that if you're separated from your baby, it's also the same. So if your baby is for any reason has got feeding problems, say you've got something like a cleft lip and palate baby, you still need to do hand expressing and pumping if your baby can't attach to the breast. Or you know, if you're separated from your baby, you also need to do this in order to stimulate your feeds if your baby's say premature. And do remember that if you've had a baby early, and it gets, you know, the earlier it is, the more you have to work hard to get your milk production in, because you haven't allowed your breast to develop to the full capacity in the trimester that in the last trimester, your breast cells and all the ducts and everything change, and there's more of them as you get further on in your pregnancy. So if you have a 26, 27 week baby, your milk production is not going to be as much as somebody who's had a 40-week baby, because your breast development is more immature. You will make milk if you work really hard, but you don't have the same number of ducts in your breast to produce the milk and the milk cells and everything. So you do have to be really proactive if you've had preemie babies and you're separated from them as well. So if you have your baby separated, or you're not able to feed it, then the first thing is we'd suggest that you smell your baby. So sniff your baby's head, and if you obviously haven't had your baby, then you can't do that, but be somewhere safe and comfortable and private, so that you feel that you can let down, because the hormones are very shy. So if you are feeling observed and you're stressed, this isn't going to happen as easily as if you're in a comfortable warm room where nobody can see what you're doing. So if you're in the hospital doing this, then go into the bathroom if you feel that you are, you know, in not the toilet but in the bathroom, in the woods or the shower room, there's a place you can go to where you can.
The shower helps
lock,
too.
Yeah, shower will help. Warm water will help, but you can lock the door and feel that nobody's going to walk in on you if you're feeling, you know, a little bit nervous about it.
That doesn't mean you have to, though. Many mums do it at the bedside, and
Most
you know,
of them do.
Yeah,
most of them
so
do.
it depends on how you feel.
Yeah,
I've supported mothers.
Option.
I've supported mothers who prefer to be in a bathroom, I have to say.
Yeah, and you know, mums don't let down if they're stressed.
Yeah.
You don't produce colostrum or anything if you're stressed. So you know, when you say I haven't got anything, think about where you are and how you're feeling, and what's just happened in the run up to you trying, and then change that so that you can start to produce more hormones which will let them down. So you can have a warm shower, warm flannels, you can lie in the bath and do this, it really doesn't matter, but you can massage your breast as well after you've had skin to skin with your baby, so lots and lots of stimulation of the ducts and everything, and then making a C, so your pincer like, can you see that? You go 2 to 3 centimetres behind the base of your nipple, and everyone's got a sweet spot, you'll know where it is, and the texture of your breast changes. So take your fingers like a pincer, stay in that pincer. We don't want that. If you do that, it's just rubbing, it's not actually targeting the areas that we want. Take your push back into your breast, and then squeeze down for about 4 seconds, and then release, and then push back, squeeze down and hold for about 4 seconds and release, and you do that until you either see something and it stops, or you don't see anything, try somewhere else, and you work all the way around your breast like a clock face, because there's little bits everywhere, and if nothing's happening, then just adjust your fingers. So don't think, oh, there's nothing there. There might not be anything there, because that's also normal when you first start, when you're pregnant and when you've just had your baby, but you have to tap into the different areas. So you might need to go a little bit further towards your nipple, or you might need to go a bit further back, and there'll be certain areas in your breast that are much more free with colostrum than other areas, and you will find where they are when you do it on yourself. So it's not an exact science, but you do that all the way around, and give it time. Don't go whoop, 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 like
that's
that, you know.
That's one of the things I was doing training for staff the other day, and I reminded them that we tend to talk to parents about working the whole area, thinking about a clock, working the whole area, but actually it's really important to stay in one area for quite a while, because particularly colostrum, and that's what we're normally doing it with, is thick and gloopy, and it takes time. So if mums start, you know, if you start, you're having to go and you're in and hold, release, in and hold, release, and think, oh, it's not coming, and you move, well, it may have come on the next few, so don't move your fingers too soon. Really work one area, really have a go at that one area, and then move on. And normally the key, you know, if you are getting any, the cue will be, it's when it stops. So you've got some, it's now slowing down. Okay, right, I'm going to move my fingers on into the next place. So not swiveling around. We don't, and I've watched mums doing it. They're here, 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 and you're thinking, well, it's never going to come, because you're working each duct, and it's not, if you're here, then the duct that's here isn't going to work. You're not working on it. So keep to one area, really work it, then move. And
you know, don't expect huge amounts. Some people produce huge amounts, but not many. It's normally just tiny drips, and this is why we use a syringe. So, and it, you know, this is part of doing it antenatally and getting some of these if you want to, because actually you learn how to use a syringe a little bit as well, because it's actually quite a hard thing to do, and you can just collect the little drips with a syringe like that, and you can some people do it, hold it in a slightly different way, but you can just hold it and pull the syringe in and just get the little drips as you get them. But it, you know, it is trial and error, and so you do that side, and then you go to that side, do the same, go round your breast that way, and then you'll go back to this side and do this side again, because then you've started the flow. And you might find then, by doing it slowly and gently, the next time is that you start to see the flow happening, and then you go back to the other side and do it again. But it's a pincer action, it's not a rub. So you're not rubbing like that, it's targeting
and hold
really firmly and hold.
Like that.
It's almost like you're putting the edges of the areola onto each other. You know, you're squeezing and pushing the edges of your areola imaginary, trying to do that so that you're really tapping inside your breast tissue.
Just qualify that though, because everybody's areolas are different, and we have some people's areolas are tiny and some that are like dinner
Imagine
plates.
that part of your breast,
So think about
it's not exact.
the right place for you. So as we have, we're always assessing staff, and sometimes we get told edge of the areola. Well, it depends very much on your breast.
2 to 3 centimetres behind the nipple base is about the right place.
Most women, yeah.
Yeah.
Charlotte's popped up another comment. She says she enjoyed feeding Alicia, but sadly she had to stop a bit earlier than she hoped because of the medication was on. And we've talked about medications on here before. Remember that actually there are very, very few medications that you can't take with breastfeeding. So if you are in that situation, have a chat with your GP, but also check it out with us maybe, or have a look at the Breastfeeding Network. There's a fantastic resource on the Breastfeeding Network about all sorts of medications, including anaesthetics, scan mediums, antibiotics, antipsychotics. There's just everything, hay fever medications. And I think we've said this on here before, the majority of them are absolutely fine. There are very few medications that you can't take and breastfeed. But the one thing you don't want to be taking is Sudafed. Just get that out there. Sudafed is the medication
comes in hay fever season, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In cold season.
Yeah, so people take Sudafed because it dries up your mucous membranes. Well, unfortunately, it will shut your milk production down as well. So do avoid Sudafed as much as you
anything
can.
with pseudoephedrine in it. So, any sort of hay fever medication that's got pseudoephedrine in it, because it has the same effect. It
Check your night nurses and day nurses, those sort of things.
Shrinks your mucous membranes.
Yeah, so because they're drying you out. So do have a think. So
poor old pharmacist.
Yeah, poor old Charlotte. She stopped feeding earlier than she wanted. She's just saying that she's going to have a little memory bauble put on her for her tree because of losing her second baby. Poor love.
Oh, that's a nice thing to do.
Yeah. Leanne's put on that Lyra turned 8 months yesterday. Wow, gosh, where's that time gone? And is enjoying trying lots of foods as well as keeping up all her breastfeeds.
Lovely.
It's important to me that I cook all her food, and I've been baking bread for her. When cooking for her, can I use plant-based milks, oats, soy, for example, or should I use EBM? I think the best place to check Leanne, because she's under a year, the best place to check is First Steps Nutrition.
Yeah.
Have a quick peek on there and see what the wonderful Helen Crawley has written about plant-based milks.
If you're breastfeeding still, or giving breast milk or cow's milk, as in formulas, then that's fine if you're giving it as well. But I think if you're just cooking with it, I think that's probably okay. But not as you can't use it as a primary food.
Yeah, not as a substitute. So
you've got to give either your breast milk or first milks to your baby if you're weaning until they're over 1. So, but I think if you're cooking, it shouldn't be a problem. As long as it's a healthy, balanced diet, I think that shouldn't be a problem.
Worth having a look though, because it's a really good resource.
Soys and things, because we do talk about phytoestrogens in soy milks for children and babies. So it is a good source, as Alex says.
She's also got, she's got a whole section about milk, breast milk substitutes, different formulas, but she also has a section on complementary foods, solid foods, weaning foods. So actually that's well worth having a look at, and you probably find that really interesting, Leanne. Can't believe Lyra's 8 months.
And check with your health visitor as well, because that's what she does a lot of. She talks a lot about weaning and early development with your babies and things. So they will be the most up to date on that.
Right, well, we haven't got any more for the minute. We'll wait and see if another flurry comes in.
We were talking about using a pump as well, weren't we?
Oh, yeah, we were going to chat about pumps, weren't we?
Weren't we? And the bits of equipment that we've got, because there's always room for pumping. And I talked to a mum this morning and I said, what would you like me to talk about today? And she said some of the things that she wished she'd known about was pumping and compression. And, how powerful it's been. Her baby's, just a few weeks old, and it wasn't gaining weight, and so she started compressing, and it went from not putting on very much to just putting on 35 grams a day, which is a little girl, it's much more than it needs to do. So it was a very powerful tool for her. And compression we talk about with when the baby's feeding, so as it's suckling you hold and squeeze, and that pushes milk in, so it's like almost pumping and pushing milk in when your baby suckles, and then when they stop you let go. So it's not like that, where you're expressing, it's actually squeezing your breast, holding it. Baby suckles, you let go, and when the baby stops suckling, you stop, and then when the baby starts suckling, you do that, and that pushes milk in, and it's a really good way of stimulating letdowns in your breast, and you might not feel them, that's normal, but it stimulates you to let down and have more milk, so your baby gets much more milk. So it's a bit like pumping while you're breastfeeding, and so it's a really good tool, and you can do that when your baby's 1 day, 2 days old with colostrum. You can squeeze your breast and compress, and that can push colostrum into your baby's mouth as well. So if they're feeding hourly, which sometimes babies do when they're chasing milk, you can use compression to give them that extra bit of milk in the early days. It's not when you haven't got enough milk. You can do it at lots of different times. If your baby's sleepy, you can give your breast a bit of a compress to see if they really want the milk more, or if they're just nibbling because they're enjoying being with you. Do they really want more milk at all? And but it does make the big difference with their transfer of milk, and it helps them to get more milk. So she asked me to talk about that.
Yeah, I did it with a mum this morning, and we just watched this baby's jaw really drop when she did it. So you really saw this baby was getting a really big mouthful. Can make a really big difference.
It does give them more calories, and you know, it's like giving a top up. They could get an extra 10-20 mils at the breast by doing compressions with the feeding. So that's quite significant if you're having to top up as well. And if you do that and you top up, your baby then gets twice as many calories. So you know, you start to see weight going up if it works really well. So you're going to talk about pumps.
Well, I was just going to say thought we might mention pumps. We've got a few more questions come through, so we need to keep an eye on the time. So we were just going to have a quick chat about pumps. A lot of the mothers that we come into contact, and invariably we've come into contact with them because things aren't going as straightforward as they hoped. And that's something we haven't said this time, is that we don't see every mother. We see the mothers with problems. So in a way, be really pleased if you walk out of this hospital and don't meet us. Because if we do meet you, it's probably because something's not going quite as well as we hope. You at all. Yeah, you don't want to see us. We'd love to see you all. We wish we could, but you really don't want to.
10 of us.
Yeah, but there isn't 10 of us. There's 4 of us. 4 of us, but 3 full-time equivalents. So we're only 3 full-timers. So from that point of view, the likelihood of meeting us is fairly slim. And obviously, we do know some of the names on these that are coming through today because they're people that we have helped. And we're very happy to talk on, do these sessions and chat on the phone and do emails. But we can never get round everybody. So actually,
you don't see us on the ward. That's good.
Yes,
you don't need to
that's
see us.
Really good if you've not been referred
Don't
to
see
us.
many on the ward because most mums are normal, and we just see much more complex problems with mums with medical problems or babies and not gaining weight at all for any reason, or got slightly more complex issues. If you're just struggling to attach your baby, you shouldn't be seeing us. You should be seeing your midwife on the ward or care assistant on the ward that have had lots of training to help you and support you to breastfeed. And I know they're busy, but they're not psychic. They don't know if you need help, so you've got to ask them if you want help, and be persistent and say, I'd like you to help me breastfeed, because they will do that if you ask them to. But they'll walk around and do lots of things, but they won't come and ask you every time you want to feed your baby. So it's up to you to ask them if you're on the ward.
So at the moment, at any one time we can have up to 43 women on the postnatal ward. At the moment we're seeing 3. So that gives you an example of the ratio of people in and the ratio of people that we see. So, and that's today we'll be seeing 3 on the wards, unless somebody did that might have been a bleep for somebody else. But that's quite normal that we're only seeing a small proportion of the women on the wards.
Tiny number.
Because we're also doing quite a lot with mothers over the phone, on email, and also seeing them in clinic. Yeah. And training staff. So tomorrow is a big training staff day. We're going to be doing lots of training tomorrow. And so we were just to chat about pumps. So there are all different sorts of pumps. And if you're on the wards, you'll see that we have yellow Medela pumps. We have green Amida pumps. We have some Ardo pumps. And this is the baby Ardo. So this is the same, more or less the same stuff as the one that we've got. We've got 2 of these Ardo pumps. They're much bigger on the stand. But this is the baby one, which many mums buy. And it's a really good pump. But the thing about it is remember thinking how to use it. And this is one of the things that we just wish every mother knew when they're using a pump like this. So this pump has an on-off here, so it's on now. And if you're starting, what you're going to start with is, you won't be able to see, but this says cycles, so we're going to up the cycles to nice and fast, and we're going to have lowish vacuum. And then as soon as the mum starts to see milk, the milk starts to come through the funnels, and we'll show you the funnels in a minute, she drops the cycles right down, and she ups the vacuum to wherever is comfortable. Now, I've met many mums who have told me that they just put everything up high. Well, that's not how a pump works.
Make you sore.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to do any good.
Hurt your nipples.
We need to mimic a baby. So that's why we start with a pump like these ones, where you have a choice. So that's the Ardo and the meter pumps. When you have a choice, you start with fast cycles and low vacuum. And the minute you begin to see any milk coming, you slow the cycles right down and you up the vacuum to wherever is comfortable. Now, the reason that you do that is because when a baby goes on the breast, they go quick, 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 quick to get the let down. And as soon as they get the let down, they go into long, deep sucks with swallows and pauses. Long, deep sucks with swallows and pauses. So you're mimicking that by having fast cycles, low vacuum, and then as soon as the milk starts to come, you up the cycle, so drop the cycles and you up the vacuum. And the reason I'm doing this is because on the Amida pumps, they've got these like radio dials, and it looks like this, and then you go like that, and that's how it works. And on these ones, you go up and down. But that's how you use them. So Naomi, you had some kits to show.
I have. We haven't got any
tubing.
haven't got any tubing,
No
for
tubing.
that one, but
So-
that's the Amida kit. So they're slightly different, and they'll be attached to tubing, and they can be all taken apart. So that's the valve that stops the milk coming back out at you, so that protects the tubing, so you don't get milk backflow, and that goes on like that. And then that's attached, so they all come off, and these bits are washed. So that little bit there is the bit that the milk drips, and if you haven't got that present in the pump, you won't get the pump working. It won't create the vacuum that you need, and the milk won't drip into the pot. And so that bit, bar the flange and that's all washed. So you take it apart and you wash it all, and then the funnel doesn't need to, the tubing doesn't need to be washed, but that's on there, and that's for an Amida or an Ardo Calypso pump. That's what your kit will look like in the hospital. We've got slightly different ones for the Medela pumps, and they've got a different sort of funnel on them. So they've got, this is the filter that goes onto a big Symphony, which is the Medela Symphony, the yellow one on the wards, and they're slightly different if you've got your own pumps. And the kits are, I think we've changed over the kits recently, they're slightly different. The other thing to say is that make sure your funnel sizes fit you, because it's a real problem. So this is quite a big nipple on here, and this is quite a small funnel, and I would say that funnel for this breast is slightly too small. It looks a bit tight. I think this is a 24, isn't it? Does it say on it? Hasn't got, so 24, it might be 27.
I can see here.
Can you?
This is a 30.5.
Oh, looks, so that's quite a big size. That's the standard size that we would give out with the Medela and with the other pumps. That is that 28?
It's 28
That's 28 and a half.
yeah.
So there are all sorts of different sizes. The biggest is about 36 millimetre, but the standard pump that you get when you buy a pump is 24. And I'm not sure if we've got any 24s.
They're very small.
They're very tiny, and most women they're quite tight for. Now some mums they do work, and if you, where's that little plastic breast you've got? So that's, you know, that's a smaller nipple, and that would be huge on that. That funnel would be quite huge. So you've got to look at your nipple size and the areola, not necessarily the areola, but the space around, and you don't want your breast to be sucked so that it's out of control. That's too squishy, that one. But it doesn't need to be sucked in completely, so there's no movement around it. There's got to be space, and the nipple's got to be able to elongate in order to tap into the ducts that are around the areola and create the vacuum to suck the nipples out, the milk out of through the nipple. So if it's wrong, it will hurt. You will get cracks around the base of your nipple if the funnel's the wrong size. So it's really important that you you know, if you buy one of the cheap pumps which are on Amazon, and they are absolutely brilliant, they're about £40, things like Baby Bella, Bella Baby Pump, isn't it, and things like that. They're made in China. They're absolutely brilliant. They're you know, digital readout, double pumping, but if you've got large nipples,
No good.
it's no good, because the funnels are 24s and they will not work for you. So be very careful about what you buy, because if you do get one and it is good value for money and they work absolutely fantastically, and there's thousands of reviews on them, they may not work for you if your nipples are much of a different shape and size to you know, smaller nipples, which most women don't have. So be very wary that you're getting the right size and it's it is comfortable for you. And if you get on the ward, if you get one of the Ardo kits, you get 2 different size funnels. You get a 27.5 and you get a 30. So you can put the 27 inside as an insert, and if it's too small, then you can take that out and use a 30, and that will ensure that you get more milk out of your breast when it fits properly. And you know when it doesn't fit properly, you get sore. You will get sore. But you won't get sore for a few sessions, so you don't know until 3 or 4 pumps down the road that it's not quite working. Then you put a larger funnel on and you find suddenly you get much more milk out in your pump sessions. It's much more effective. So do make sure that you, oh look there, that was in there, that's in there, that's an insert, that's come out. So that's how you would do it if you were reducing the size of the funnel with these. And you might well get 2 if you get a kit when you buy one of the pumps as well. Depends on the pump.
Right, for the flurry of more comments and questions. So Leanne's just come back to saying, just cooking with it in things like porridge and poaching fish, so she's going to check first steps nutrition. Thank you. Naomi has said, I'm trying to harvest colostrum. I'm struggling to get anything out. Any tips? Nice place, nice warm place. No one going to walk in. Put some nice music on. Watch our video. What else can we suggest?
Keep doing it.
Yeah, keep going, because it's really common.
Yeah.
And even if you don't get it, and some women never get any in the antenatal period, you've got the skill. So you don't worry if you're not getting anything. Just have a go when you've had your baby. So just keep practicing and see what happens. But don't despair. It's very, very rare that women don't have milk. Very, very rare.
I mean, we get lots of staff saying there's no colostrum, she's really hand expressing, and then we do it again and we check the technique, and then suddenly they get 10 mils. So, it is about technique. So just make sure you're tapping into the right bits.
Yeah. Fingers in the right place, holding long enough.
Pincer. It's pincer, it's not rub.
Yeah.
Target those areas.
Charlotte's come back. Quick question, sorry to keep writing on here. Alicia is still not eating proper food, solid food like we eat. Is there any tips? Not making it a big deal. I think the less of a big deal you make, Charlotte, the more she's going to come. She'll get there in her own time. As long as she's eating enough to make her healthy, then I wouldn't worry too much.
Give her a spoon and see if she does it herself.
She likes porridge and muesli. Well, they're good. That's brilliant. It's a good start. And oaty bars. So I think she's got some good taste. That's brilliant. I think no pressure on that. Just let her go. She'll get there. Lucy said, hi, my little girl is 3.5 months and we've had a very successful breastfeeding journey so far. However, at the weekend she started a nursing strike. I can still feed her, but we have to distract her in order to get her latched on, or I have to feed her lying down on the bed. Any advice on how to get her back to feeding in normal positions? I'd like to be able to leave the house. All that is a bit challenging.
That's 3 months.
3.5, yeah.
Yeah, they get really nosy at this time and they get really distracted by noise. And you said you're lying down and in a dark room, but I think you just have to persevere with it. And have you had a period? Have you changed your perfume? Have you changed your deodorant?
Started contraception.
All of those things can happen. She might have had a bit of a cold, so she's got a bit of an earache. All of those things, blocked nose, all of those things can make them have a not so good experience at feeding, where they might not be able to suck, swallow, breathe, and it's just teasing her back to normal. Do it with no distraction. So, as you say, dark room, no radio, no television, don't go out for a bit, don't put yourself in busy areas. And just make it relaxed, go in the bath, feed her in the bath, things like that. And
not making it an ordeal. You just go with her for the moment. Don't
feed if she's hungry.
Yeah, and it's it's one of those things. It's a bit like with Charlotte and Alicia and the different foods. Don't make it a battleground. Keep it as positive an experience as possible.
She's dribbling more and got sort of bumpy gums because it might be that she's just a bit sore. So. It's hard. There's no answer to that when you've just got to keep going and hopefully she'll go back to it, but just do it in her own time.
Yeah. They normally do, don't they? They normally do.
It's busy time. Little girls are very nosy quite early on, much more than boys, I think. I think they tend to pick up on what's going on much quicker.
Very aware. Good luck, Lucy. I hope it gets better, but seek more help if it doesn't. Leanne's just come back saying she loves her Ardo clip, so brought thanks to my recommendation. Yes. I have to say, I think, you know, there are
Little
some
fat
very
horses, aren't
there are
they?
some very good little pumps, and that is one of them. They are very, very good, and they don't cost the earth, you know, which is so good.
Get someone to buy it for
yeah.
you as a present if you
Yeah.
want something. You know, get someone to get it as a present.
And now, I mean, there's a whole spectrum of pumps available. I had a mother in clinic today who's got one of the ones that fits in her bra. It's not an LV, it's a different make, but you know, it depends on you, and each woman is different as to what suits her pump wise. So we could almost do, like the Have a Sling library, we could almost do with a pump library. It would be really good, but we never, our pumps disappear, so we would really struggle. Right, couple flashing through right now. Alicia's trying to walk and becoming cheeky, and she's a great personality. She's an evil laugh. Oh, there you go, Charlotte, how cute. Marzena has said, hi ladies, just a quick one. How would starting on a contraceptive pill affect breastfeeding? It can affect the milk supply depending on what you're on. So you should really be on a progesterone only pill, and not a combined pill, because it can inhibit your milk supply, Marzena.
And same with the coil. If you have a Mirena coil put in, it's progesterone only, but it can stimulate, it can reduce your milk production for a bit.
Yeah.
And if you ovulate, your body might change smell and taste. It might affect the milk a little bit. So babies often pick up on that.
Oh, and another one snuck in. Bianca has said, I'm 38 weeks along and have been collecting colostrum. I've been around 8 mils so far. We'll keep going. How much should I bring into hospital? Should I bring it all? Please don't. We say this every week. Please just bring as small amount as possible. If you've got 8 mils,
a syringe like that in.
Yeah, just bring a mil in. If you know, leave the rest at home. Bring it in a cool box with ice blocks, because once defrosted, it has to be used within 12 hours. And we know what labour's like. Labour can take its own course. It can be a few hours, it can be many hours. And once defrosted, we would have to throw it away if it's gone more than 12 hours. Much better it's at home and that somebody brings it in for you, than you've brought it all in and we end up having to throw it away. I'd love to say we could put it in a freezer. We've tried that. They go missing. We'd much rather you keep it on you, smallest volume possible, and if need be, someone brings you extra in if it's needed. And to be honest, we've talked about how important it is getting your milk supply going. If you've got colostrum that you've already collected, giving it in that first 24 to 48 hours and not hand expressing still will impact on your milk supply. So actually the most important thing is that you've got that skill, you've got it as a backup, but actually that you're getting the baby on the breast and you're hand expressing if you need to. So if you have to give your expressed, you need to be expressing as well, because otherwise the body doesn't know that you need that volume of milk. Yeah, and it will impact on your milk supply in the long run. So as little as possible, and if you're having to give it, make sure you're expressing to replace it.
And expressing labour.
Yeah.
It's all right on the side for ages, 24 hours. So, you know, if you're in labour and you've hand expressed in when you're waiting to get into stronger labour, it might get you into stronger labour if you're ready to go and you're already in labour, but also you can leave it on the side because it's not frozen.
Yes, exactly.
So it's fresh to use for 24 hours. So it'll be ready to give your baby after you know, it's had a feed. You can give it a little bit more if you want as well, whatever. But it's there and you've expressed it while you're in hospital, and that's a win-win.
Charlotte's just come back saying, asking if after a miscarriage it's harder to become pregnant. No, not necessarily. You know, that unfortunately the miscarriage rate is really quite high. Many women will experience miscarriage. And you've asked whether they'll do scans if you become pregnant. You would follow the normal pathway. It tends to be that you have to have a number of miscarriages before you follow a different pathway. So it would be a normal pathway for you. So you would get your 12-week, your 20 and your 36-week scans. That would be the norm. And Bianca's just come back saying, okay, great, thank you. And Marzella's just come back and said thank you too. So, right, I think we're going to call it a day.
I think we've done quite well, haven't we, today? I think we're over time, aren't we?
We are, 10 minutes over.
Lovely. Great questions. And we're watching the sunset, so
yes,
it's really beautiful.
Really beautiful here today.
So look out the window and appreciate.
Yeah.
And we will see you next Thursday.
Yep.
Bring some lovely questions again for us and think about them all week and then come back to us. Thank you very much. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.